Let's bring in tonight's panel, Sky News host Steve Price and Sky News contributor Joe Hildebrand. Welcome to you both.
Lovely to be here. How are you?
Now, Steve, Albanese has been accused by many people, the coalition, security experts, of fueling social unrest in his government's rhetoric, their continual anti-Israel rhetoric. People think it must be true and then they protest on the streets. So surely there's no reason for surprise when finally the terror threat level has to rise.
No, not at all. And look, when you see Mike Burgess today say that it's not the people he knows about, but the ones he doesn't know about that worry him the most. But isn't it delicious irony that the Prime Minister, while standing there next to the head of ASIO, talking about how division is being whipped along by the issue out of the Middle East, the Prime Minister can't even go to his own office in his own electorate because it's being blockaded, still, as I believe, by pro-Palestinian protesters. I mean, surely if we're going to get serious about this issue, and we've now got this threat level that's been raised by one notch, surely if we're going to get serious about it, one of the things we've got to start doing is stop these protests where you've got protesters marching through the streets of our capitals every weekend wearing pro-Hamas badges and keffirs and all sorts of paraphernalia. Let's stop that for a start. Let's get all the people out of the front of those offices out of the way and get serious about it. But the problem is you've got Anthony Albanese, Tony Burke and Ed Husic, who all hold seats where they want to not upset the voters in those seats who are pro-Palestine.
But it's more important than politics. And the Prime Minister today in that press conference, Joe, he indicated that some politicians even need security at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the PM has actually been very non-inflammatory and pretty reasonable on this. I know he hasn't been as outspoken in support of Israel as a lot of people would like him to be, and that's a fair cop. But again, he's called out those protesters who are out front of his office and have stopped him and his workers from being able to use that electorate's office for months now. He's called out people who have used the from the river to the sea chant and claimed that, you know, that was all fine and no problem. He said that's inappropriate. He said that's basically supporting genocide. And he's appointed a commissioner to investigate anti-Semitism. That was the first point of order. I know, again, he didn't do it as soon as a lot of people wanted him to, but he did it before he appointed the other commissioner for social cohesion or Islamophobia or whatever, and that, I think, sent a clear signal. I think the real problem here is that terrorists don't think they're terrorists, right? Terrorists think they are doing the right thing and they are pursuing a higher cause. I just happen to be listening to a series on the suffragettes, and there's a big debate among historians at the moment as to whether or not they should be described as terrorists. Obviously not on the same scale as Hamas or Hezbollah or anything we've seen here. But the issue is that they use a fig leaf of legitimacy to justify their horrendous
But surely the
actions.
burning of the bras is nothing like the slaughter of entire
suffragettes did more than burn
families.
bras. They bombed buildings and set fire to buildings. And again, there's a very live debate, and a lot of people are saying these are self-described terrorists. The point is that if you give legitimacy, if you give support to these grievances and say, yes, it's worth, vandalising, war memorials, that it's worth vandalising electorate offices or smashing windows, that it's worth blockading people and keeping them out of their place of work for months and months and months on end, you are basically giving comfort to terrorists. You're giving comfort to the people who say, well, if it's okay for me to smash a window, why isn't it okay for me to bash a cop? And if it's okay for me to bash a cop,
that's exactly
why isn't it okay for me to kill someone?
That's exactly what the Prime Minister hasn't done.
Well, no, the Prime Minister has called that out. It is the people on the extreme left who have done it.
But he barely called it out, and he hasn't emboldened law enforcement. Steve Price, go ahead.
No. Of course he hasn't. I mean, Joe talks about how the Prime Minister has spoken a lot of words. That's all he has done. Where is the action to stop these things happening on the streets, Joe?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's all good and well to say, oh, well, he said the right thing. He's done nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's a legal grey area as to whether or not you can just,
either.
But there's a legal grey area if you just, sending in the cops to just drag people off public footpaths.
Well, they were happy to do it during the COVID pandemic, and there are race hate. Most people do think that was outrageous, but there are race hate laws, and they haven't been used, and they should be used.